Hello, everyone. My name is Simone Soublé, and I will be evaluating John Stuart Mill's essay on liberty. I will be tying in his main focal points and applying them to the current Black Lives Matter movement. So, as you have all seen on the news and on social media, the recent killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Elijah McClain, and countless other Black and Brown people that have been murdered by the police during a global pandemic has caused millions from around the world to make the statement that enough is enough. Through the use of social media, the Black Lives Matter hashtag started trending again, and people started sharing the victims' names and stories on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, and advocates gathered crowds to peacefully protest to demand justice. The reason for all of these recent murders is simply that police officers have too much power. The way George Floyd died, by the officer's knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The knee to neck move is banned by several major metropolitan police departments. But Minneapolis police allow their police officers to restrain suspects' necks if they're aggressive or resisting arrest. Sure, George Floyd initially resisted arrest, but that's because there wasn't a solid reason for him to be arrested. Police officers have that certain authoritative command, especially if they're pulling you over because you have a broken taillight, or shooting you until you're dead if you're going to the local store to buy some Skittles, or if you're sleeping peacefully in your own home. In an article from The Insider, it states that the average US police department requires fewer hours of training than what it takes to become a barber or a plumber. Just let that sink in. Someone with a loaded gun, a taser, pepper spray, and a nightstick trains fewer hours than a man with a plunger or a man with some tweezers and a razor. In figuring out who resonates with the issue of authority the most, I chose to evaluate John Stuart Mill's On Liberty. In Mill's Liberty, the moral concepts he discussed were tyranny of the majority, the harm principle, tolerance, progressive morality, and freedom. By definition, tyranny is a cruel and oppressive government or rule. This was applicable in ancient Greece, Rome, and England, and over time, meanings and roles shifted. This evolution brought about the problem of the tyranny of the majority, in which a democratic majority forces its will on the minority. Mill says there needs to be a protection against the tyranny of the prevailing opinion and feeling, against the tendency of society to impose, by other means than civil penalties, its own ideas and practices as rules of conduct on those who dissent from them. We know that actions speak louder than words, so Mill created the harm principle that stated the only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised over any member of a civilized community against his own will is to prevent harm to others. His own good, either physical or moral, is not a sufficient warrant. Overall, citizens can only interfere with others for self-protection, only if that person will harm others. Mill brings up the duty of toleration, which is admitted with tacit reserves. He gives the examples that one person will bear with dissent in matters of church government, but not of dogma. Another can tolerate everybody, but short of a papist or a Unitarian. Even though toleration is good, in order to see real change within people and within the community, it's not good enough. At the beginning of chapter 1, Mill states that social liberty is so far from being new that, in a certain sense, it has divided mankind, almost from the remotest ages, but in the stage of progress into which the more civilized portions of the species have now entered. It presents itself under new conditions and requires a different and more fundamental treatment. That being said, Mill is explaining how being progressive as citizens would give a rise to categorical preference for activities and exercise his or her higher capacities. In the context of freedom, Mill states the only freedom which deserves the name is that of pursuing our own good in our own way, so long as we do not attempt to deprive others of theirs or impede efforts to obtain it. Mill's process of moral evaluation in the realm of police brutality and the Black Lives Matter movement would consist of making sure that citizens feel comfortable but protected. A cop should not be drawing their weapon while stopping a black or brown person or any person of that matter for a broken taillight. Not only is it comfortable for the victims, but it's also uncomfortable for viewers if body camera footage or bystander footage was shown. Mill would also look at the corrupt criminal justice system and would notice that those in higher positions of power, the tyranny, are purposefully criminalizing and stereotyping Black and Brown people, the minorities. When it comes to the harm principle, police officers always say they shot the person because they felt threatened. They felt threatened by this unarmed Black or Brown person and that they feared for their life, when in reality, the police officers are the actual threat, both with their weapons of power and actual physical weapons. Mill would not tolerate what these police officers have gotten away with. However, Mill would be glad that these protests have led to progression and that the citizens are exercising their freedom of speech and letting their voices be heard in order for real change to occur. That's it. Thanks for watching.